Sit down. Let's go.
These only sports with a twist, no script. Legends coming through on the guest list. DC, Minnesota, land of the lakes, Green Bay. That's all I gotta say. Kelly Skull with the Wolves, you know we don't play. We get wild every single day. We got our flaws, but we love our Saints. Twist Nation, go to like our page. Twist Nation. Twist Nation. Twist Nation.
Twist Nation, what's poppin'?
Wow.
Episode 22, Harry the Hitman.
Matt Benz, that's what that is.
Matt Benz.
Back in the day, buffet, standing at the plate, deuce on the
Strike
back.
free.
Dingers.
You're out.
Dingers.
You were number 22.
22 was my number. Dad was 21. I was 22.
All right.
Believe it.
Who's 22 for the Wild?
Doesn't matter.
You don't know?
No.
You're our hockey guru.
Let's go with Fiala. I believe.
It is Fiala. Yeah. Perfect. Well, we got a huge guest lineup this week, but before we get to our first interview, we just want to thank you, Twist Nation. We did it.
Victory!
We won Show of the Month. Couldn't have done it without you and your support.
Love it.
So we appreciate it greatly.
Yes.
So we have 5 different interviews set up. It's going to be an interview-packed show, each of which are insiders for their own team. And we are going to start with the best team. The best team. The best team, Greg. See, there's no Packer shit up here. All right?
This is going to be this. Yeah, I'm going to go get a root canal instead.
So all of our interviews, as you know, are brought to you by Bricks Boatworks, and they are deemed essential. They are open. The weather is warming up.
Yes.
You better hit John and his brother up. Get your boat right. Get out on the lakes.
Yep.
Practice social distancing, just like us.
Yep.
All right? Be healthy. Stay safe.
Put the plexiglass in between you. It'll be all right.
So our first interview, we are going to call Arif Hassan, who covers the Vikings
Via
the best
Athletic
team.
and
The best
theathletic.com.
for The Athletic.
Yeah.
So we did a test run. Hopefully our calls and videos are all set up perfect.
I believe it will be. Faith.
This will take an hour. You guys had like 400 draft picks.
It's a beautiful thing.
You guys have a great practice roster.
You shut your mouth, Greg.
You got to believe he's that busy because our team is just so prevalent.
Oh, yeah. You guys,
Yeah.
seriously, you guys drafted an entire college.
9, 5, 2,
Oh,
4.
Up.
there we
Oh,
go.
oh, that could have been anyone.
That could have. So we'll hope he calls back. I did talk to him to confirm. So again, Arif covers the Vikings.
Yeah.
For The Athletic.
So let's go over some of those picks since I got them up right here. In the first round, we did take Justin Jefferson at number 22.
Absolute stud.
At 31, we took Jeff Gladney, TCU cornerback.
Matt's already got his tattoo.
Love it.
I was going to say,
Beautiful.
you're still excited about that.
Hyped. Second round, we grabbed Ezra Cleveland, Boise State offensive tackle.
Nailed that one.
Third round, we took Cam Tiny Dantzler, and that was at the 89th pick. Yes, beautiful.
I will stop this feed if you keep singing.
Fourth round, we got 3 guys. We got DJ Wanham, defensive end, South Carolina. We got defensive tackle James Lynch out of Baylor. And we got Troy Dye, linebacker, Oregon. Then in the 5th round, we took Harrison Hand. Yep, cornerback, Temple. 5th round as well, we got KJ Osborne, Miami. And then let's see, 6th round, we got Blake Brandel, Oregon State offensive tackle. And we got Josh, how do you pronounce that? Medalis? Sounds great. Michigan.
Yeah.
Let's go with
Medalist.
Yeah.
Josh Medalist.
Safety.
You just say it. You say it with confidence.
Yeah.
And then nobody knows the difference.
I figured
let's
you could pronounce
Let's rewind that again.
Yeah. So at 205, we took Josh Medalist.
Medalist. Great guy.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Michigan.
Sleeper of the draft.
Yep.
Yeah.
Medalist.
Really. Yeah.
Now you're going to get your 7th round pick.
Seventh round.
This should take us another half hour now.
Shouldn't be too bad because
At least we're drafting for this
at
year.
225 with an A draft grade, A- at that. We'll
In the
call it what it is.
7th round.
7th round.
An
We took
A.
Kenny Wilkes, defensive end, Michigan State. No big deal, Greg. 244. Guess who we got? A quarterback.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't even have to trade up for him. That was Nate Stanley out of
Because
Iowa.
no one else wanted him.
Hey, that's all right. Nobody else wanted him between your picks, between love, right? No big deal. Just fun here, Greg.
Yeah.
We just have fun on this show. All right. And then after, the sleeper Nate Stanley, we got Brian Cole II, safety out of Mississippi State, and another offensive lineman, Kyle Hinton out of Washburn. So, we got a whole new team in the draft this year.
Yeah, and that's
a beautiful
fantastic.
thing.
You guys do know that you can only have 53 guys on your roster come
Sure.
start of the season.
But like I told you, Greg, we need 90 to start, and then we weed it out.
Competition breeds success.
Breeds it.
Unless you're Kirk Cousins, apparently,
What do you mean?
because then you don't pick up a quarterback, someone to challenge him until.
So Love's going to challenge Aaron Rodgers?
We like
Okay, there's a big difference between a Hall of Fame quarterback going straight to the gold jacket and Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
You know who Kirk Cousins is? The Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame of God.
That's right.
Beat that.
Amen.
The Hall of Fame of God.
Yeah,
Praise
he
He's
is.
not even in the Michigan
Praise
State Hall of
him.
Fame.
Praise him.
Praise him.
I bet you Aaron Rodgers doesn't even know what direction heaven is.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to.
All eyes north. Okay.
Aaron Rodgers thinks he is God.
Yeah.
And you know what that got us? A Super Bowl and playoff berth and NFC championships coming out of our
Heartaches.
wazoo.
One Super Bowl and a bunch of heartaches.
Yeah.
You guys notice? Have the Vikings been in a Super Bowl in your guys' lifetime?
No.
No.
Yeah, I should tell you guys what that's like sometime.
Well, ask the majority of NFL teams. They'll tell you the same thing.
Don't NFL
Not
owners
the
get a
Pack-
ring?
What's that?
No, wait. No. What do you mean? No, let's go back to this.
What?
The majority of NFL teams are going to say that their team hasn't been to a Super Bowl in their lifetime. So we're with the majority, not the minority. So
I'd
just
rather-
because you've been blessed with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back doesn't mean the drought isn't around the corner.
No, it's not.
That's all I'm saying.
Because we got the 3rd Hall of Fame quarterback coming in back to back. How many other teams do you know have 3 quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame? We already have 3. Once
These
Aaron goes
drunken
in.
Scotties to believe that Love is a future Hall of Fame.
4th Hall of Fame quarterback from the Packers.
Oh,
Right behind Bart Starr,
there we go.
Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre.
Oh my God. It's not your fault, Greg.
No, it's not. You know what? I don't like the pick of Love.
Yeah, we
but
heard
you know
that
what?
last week on the rant. We
Yeah,
totally
but
get
you
it.
know what?
Yeah,
He is going to be the 4th Hall of Fame quarterback to play for the Packers.
it's no big deal.
All right, we're going to try him again. If he doesn't answer, we'll break down the draft a little bit until our next guest.
Beautiful. I'll just play some catch here.
9th caller.
He's missing out. He's missing out on the interview of the year.
K-Fan probably stole him.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't doubt it. Hands are all over that. His sloppy hands.
Yep,
are all
they're
over
they're
that.
live right now talking to our boy.
9, 5, 2,
All right, we'll shoot him a text here.
In all seriousness, Matt,
Sure.
I do like what the Vikings did by accumulating picks, looking at needs.
Yeah.
But at what point shouldn't they have started trading for next year?
I bet he tried.
Okay.
I guarantee it. When you can't move up aggressively like you want to, and that's what Spielman wanted to do.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that he tried to trade off. I mean, we did get a 4th rounder next year.
Yeah.
But it's a weird draft. It was a weird draft.
Yeah.
In that aspect. You couldn't really get aggressive, nor could things fall into place. So I think you got guys that can play the sport.
Yeah.
In college.
Yeah.
Will they transition? Who knows? But you got more darts on the board.
Speaking of transition, we are going to transition
Yeah, let's go.
into Lake
Here he is.
Lewis.
Beautiful, beautiful man, Lake Lewis.
Talking
Bring him
all
on.
things Redskins.
Bring
Wait
him
for
on.
it. Again, brought to you by Bricks Boatworks.
Bricks Boatworks.
Get out, ride a boat.
Twist.
There he is.
How you guys doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Fabulous.
All right, all right. I see. I don't see any hand sanitizer on the table.
Oh, we actually dipped our whole bodies in hand
I'm
sanitizer.
lathered in
prior
Purell.
to this
I took
show.
a bath in it this morning.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful thing.
we like to tell our viewers and listeners that this is actually
Yeah.
we're
Plexiglass
right here. So
Okay,
It's like phone booths that they used to have way back in the day. Yeah, those kind of like that.
hey, whatever works for you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
So we got Lake Lewis on. He is an insider for the Washington Redskins, who had the second pick in the draft. And we're going to break down the Skins and the draft with Lake. So we had you on before the draft, and you were pretty confident that Chase Young was going to be the pick, which he ultimately was. Now I'll have some talk about that later, but why don't you break down Chase and what you thought about the pick?
I mean, I thought it was a slam dunk pick. It was the only thing they could have done. If they had traded out of the number 2 pick, they would have burned DC down. This kid's from here. Played at DeMatha Catholic locally, and you have yourself just a premier player. Coming out of the draft. For me, I thought he was the best player in the draft. Take nothing away from Joe Burrow, but Cincinnati needed a quarterback. If Joe Burrow didn't have that great run with LSU, I think Chase Young would have been the number 1 pick in the draft. So the Redskins, I don't want to say lucked up into that because you have to stink to be the number 2 pick. So they stunk last year. They get the number 2 pick, and I think this guy's going to change their fortunes. I really do.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, so they take the slam dunk pick, like you said, and I did think that was a really smart decision. The way that the draft went for, rounds 2, 3, 4, with the way some of these quarterbacks were dropping, Eason, Fromm, is this an indication that they're going to give Dwayne Haskins every opportunity to succeed, or is there something that we're just not seeing when it comes to him?
Well, no, I think when I came on with you guys last time, I told you that Dwayne Haskins is the Redskins quarterback. There's no second guessing that. Kyle Allen was brought in from Carolina. Obviously, he played for Ron Rivera and Scott Turner, their offensive coordinator. He played for them for the past 2 years, so they're familiar with him. And they brought him in. Obviously, he knows the offense. You want a guy in your quarterback room that knows what you're trying to accomplish. A lot of people here wonder, was he brought in here to compete with Dwayne? Of course. I mean, every position on the field has to compete, but it's Dwayne Haskins' job, and it's so much Dwayne's job, fellas, that it would have to be a catastrophic, decline in his game in order for him not to be their opening day starter. He's the guy for the Redskins going forward for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a big confidence boost I think he needs. Kyle Allen, I loved that Ron Rivera brought him over. He wasn't great last season, but had a productive year in the NFL and will be a great backup, if injuries, barring injuries, slide him in, and I think he'll do well for him. Like I told you a few weeks back, my biggest thing is you didn't have a ton of high draft picks.
Right.
And when you keep that too, and you get Chase, yes, you get a good player, but then you're really banking on that third and couple fourths, to slide in and be starters. You got Antonio Gibson out of Memphis as a 3rd-round pick. Is he going to start right away next to McLaren? What do you know about him?
No, I don't think so. I think the Redskins looked at last year's draft. They found some diamonds in the rough. I mean, you had Steven Sims Jr., who's going to be your starting slot guy now. Kelvin Harmon also was a receiver from NC State that, came in, and he started down the stretch. So your 3 starting receivers are set right now. I think with Gibson coming in, obviously he adds depth and he adds the big play capabilities coming from Memphis. And then you also have the kid Antonio Gandy from Gandy Golden from Liberty, and he's 6'4", 225, wowed a lot of us at the Senior Bowl, did some really good things. So I think they feel like they've added depth to the receiver position. But I think in general, a lot of people said maybe you should have traded out of that number 2 pick. You could not possibly trade out of that pick and not take just a home run hit like Chase Young. But on top of that, like I said, because of some of the fines that they had last year, I felt like, they felt like maybe they had a 3rd-rounder in production in a Steven Sims Jr. last year. So they just went with what was available for him this year.
Yeah, and I think that's the big picture is that, with Chase Young being the most talented, most explosive player in this year's draft, like you said, it's a for sure. You got to take them. And also the Redskins, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they realize they're not a draft away from competing for a bowl. It's more about, little things here and there. If you can slowly get these pieces and put them together, you're hoping as a 5-year plan that you're a competitor again.
Yeah, I think they feel like they're going to compete this year. I
Sure.
really do. I think Ron Rivera, he up close and personal last year when we played down there. And I say I was at that game as well. And that was probably, for my money, the Redskins' most complete game last year. They did a lot of things on both sides of the ball, and it just so happened to be Dwayne Haskins was starting. Darius Geis was breaking long runs. I think Ron Rivera, who was on the sidelines for Carolina at the time, that game got him fired. And I think he saw that this team in the Redskins had a lot of young talent on both sides of the ball. They just needed to be coached up. And I think obviously he feels like he's the guy that can do that. When you add a Chase Young and you add a couple pieces they did in free agency, I mean, you look at the division last year, 9 wins won the division. Yep. Everyone keeps talking about the Eagles are the runaway favorite this year. I don't see that at all. I think their lack of what they did in the draft closed the gap a little bit. I think the Cowboys are the most talented team in the division. But I think if you're the Giants, if you're the Redskins, if you get ample play, proper play from your starting quarterback and Daniel Jones and then Dwayne Haskins, I think they feel like the sky's the limit with the other pieces of talent that they have on those teams.
Yeah, it all comes down to quarterback. So really giving Haskins a chance. Mm-hmm. You're going to know what you got in him this year, and hopefully it works. I think you guys have the most depth at running back. You brought in Peyton Barber, AP re-signed. Geis is there, and we had talked about Love, who's a big guy that I've been a fan of that people don't really know about. It's going to be a big battle there. Who do you see coming out on top?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's grumblings that maybe AP might be the odd man out, and I just don't possibly see how you can do that. I mean, these are a bunch of young, unproven players that we named outside of AP. Peyton Barber was, he was a tough runner in Tampa, but there's a reason why he's not in Tampa right now. So I think it's going to be a wide open thing. I do think Darius Geis is the guy they want to be their back of the future, the immediate future, like now. And I think when healthy, we've all seen that he can be special, that, he can do a lot of things. So I think it's AP and Darius for right now. If Love can come back and give them something, remember J.D. McKissick also came over from Detroit. I mean, and then you draft Gibson, who to me is more of a wide receiver, but they did play him a lot in Memphis at running back. I mean, you're right. They're loaded. They may have the deepest running back room in the NFL right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And that's the big thing that we always talk about. It's all about competition on sports teams. That's how you get the diamonds in the roughs to, really expose themselves. So I think it was a good draft. I mean, all in all, it was a good draft. I'm just so excited, as everybody is, as a sports fan, for this season. Cannot wait. And I really do appreciate you stopping by and giving us some of your time. Once again, we always appreciate having you on, man. And so that's awesome.
All right, I appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
All right, thanks a lot.
Have a good one, bud.
Be sure to retweet. We got 5 insiders. We're trying to gain some traction today.
There you go.
I'll retweet as soon as I hang up.
All right, perfect. I'll put it on Twitter after the show, and I'll tag you in it, so you'll see, Lake.
All right, I appreciate it, guys. Take
Cool.
care.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks
Take
a lot.
care.
All right.
Beautiful. First interview down. Into the next one, who I'll go ahead and introduce here a little bit, if that's all right.
Yeah, so Arif did call.
Okay.
So I'm trying to set it up since we're video.
Yeah.
To push it towards the end. So we're Vikings, Packers, but we do have our next guy lined up.
Excellent. So this is going to be Craig Mish. Craig is going to be our insider today. I mean, he's renowned for knowing about all kinds of sports. That's how I was giving him from our fan and our supporter, Sean Sorrow. So big shout out to Sean for this one. Craig's going to be giving us a little inside scoop on the Tampa Bay Bucs, who are just all through the media right now. And of course, he's also going to take us into the Dolphins as well. So let's bring Craig up. Craig, how are you, sir? Thanks for stopping in on Twist.
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Excellent. So the background looks magnificent right
Yeah, I
now.
was worried about that.
That's awesome.
That's phenomenal.
We
I love it.
appreciate that. So, just deep diving in, we'll start. Which one would you guys want to start with, Bucs or the Fins?
Let's end with the Bucs,
Okay.
since I'm most excited to talk about them.
Sounds good. So with the Dolphins, obviously, first round, 5 pick overall, they take Tua. How is Miami feeling? They're obviously ecstatic about this.
Yeah, I mean, they went into this with the goal of getting a quarterback, and I think that they did a good job of, putting up potentially some smoke screens. And at least locally, there were some people who thought that they would take Justin Herbert. I wasn't one of those, but there definitely were a fair amount of people that thought that. Look, the owner of the Dolphins, going back a year when he was watching Tua play in the national championship game, I think he always had his sights set on that. And look, just in general with the NFL draft, there's a crazy amount of misinformation that goes out there. And then the other thing that happens is quarterbacks really, what I would call, have serious draft inflation from the time that the college football season ends all the way up until the draft. And I think you saw that with Love and you saw that with Herbert. I mean, the end of the season, I don't think that anybody had Herbert going as high as he did. I definitely don't think that anybody had Jordan Love going as high as he did. So from Miami's perspective, I think that they would have been comfortable taking Love in the second round had they not taken Tua in the first. But it was pretty evident to everyone that it was always the plan to grab Tua. The only question, guys, is in the future with this new regime of the Dolphins, will they still be able to put these smoke screens up every year and get away with it? I think that it was a one and done type deal. We just won't be believing that they're not going to stray away from who they really want next year.
So, having said that, you were talking about smoke screens. There are a lot of smoke screens about would they go up, trade all 3 of their first round picks to then, guarantee that they get Burrow, or, even if they have to go up to get Tua at that point. Do you think they hit on the other 2 first round picks staying pat? Obviously, everyone's a big fan of Tua, but then you start going down the draft, and there was a lot of talk about, okay, now who are they going to take now that they got, all these picks that they've held on to? So do you think that they fulfilled their needs?
Yeah, I think that they did at offensive line, and the only really questionable one was the last pick in the third round. They took the defensive back from Auburn, and I don't know that that was necessarily a position of need. And so that tells me a little bit more about the players that they have on their roster right now, specifically Xavier Howard. And, that this guy is, they signed Byron Jones to that massive deal, so clearly they believe in him. But how much do they believe in Xavier Howard literally a year or 2 after giving him the mega contract that they did there? So that would certainly be something that I would keep an eye on. With every draft, there's going to be, sort of pivots. And I know for an absolute fact that the Dolphins had to pivot in the second round. They definitely went into this thing thinking out of the second round, they would have their running back. And there was just this crazy running back run early in the second round where Swift was off the board and Taylor was off the board. I don't think that they targeted those guys. And so it wasn't a huge surprise there. But where I think the Dolphins did make the mistake was with their first pick in the second round. Instead of taking the defensive player from Alabama, I think that they should have traded ahead of Baltimore and made sure that they either secured Cam Akers or secured J.K. Dobbins, and they didn't do either of those things. So they didn't get their future running back, so to speak, and so they'll have to attack that, I think, for sure in the 2021 draft or potentially through free agency. And let's be honest, running backs are pretty easy to come by if you really need one. Their pivot was to making that late trade for Matt Breida. And so they'll go into the season with Breida and Jordan Howard. Probably most people would make the case that's one of the weakest running back combinations to start a season in the NFL. And I probably would agree. But at the point where Tua is a starter, probably more along the lines of 2021, they're going to have to significantly upgrade that. I'm of the belief that, yes, you can find a running back anywhere. I don't think the 2 guys, though, that they have on their roster play into the future. Breida, as a matter of fact, will be a free agent after the season.
That was the biggest thing I thought you missed on. We did a draft special live, and I thought you should have taken, especially with the contract disputes of running backs now, with that 30th pick in the first round, you just grab your guy, you get the 5th-year option, then you don't have to pay him big down the road. So I thought that was the biggest loss for him. I love Raekwon Davis, defensive tackle out of Alabama. I'm a big guy on big guys. 6'7", defensive lineman is just a monster. So I was a huge fan of that pick for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't their pick. I mean, their pick was Dobbins, and they got snaked right before he went up. So, look, every team is going to say that they're prepared. And honestly, what team comes out of a draft saying we didn't get our guy outside of Belichick saying it, which he's just having fun. Realistically, but Davis was not their pick there. I don't think that they expected that. But again, every draft is going to have its moments where teams jump ahead of you and get different players. And look, Raheem Mostert took San Francisco arguably all the way to a Super Bowl last year. Mostert was the third or fourth string running back on their team too. And they're headed into a season where they drafted a ton of offensive line help because they know that they're going to have to protect Tua even maybe more so than some other teams would because there is that injury history there. So I would expect that that's really where they shined. People like to give these draft grades out, and it's so kind of ridiculous because in 2 or 3 years it could be completely wrong. But I think that they felt really happy at the end of the draft with everyone that they got, with the exception of getting a running back there. And I think that that's the one thing that, if you want to give a grade, either you give an A- or a B+ kind of thing, because they definitely did whiff there.
So just the last question then for the Dolphins.
For you.
Oh, for me. Yeah.
Speak for yourself, Matt.
As long as Fitzmagic stays healthy this year, you wouldn't expect Tua to come in, right?
You know what? There local people now in South Florida that are sort of changing their opinion on that and saying that there's a chance or that potentially he should play. I don't think so. I think that had there been a normal offseason with OTAs and everything else, I mean, I would raise the possibility of it, but I think that has to be a factor. You can learn the playbook all you want, but if you're not on the field until August, I don't know what kind of opportunity that gives you. So if I had to guess, I would say that Tua plays very little in the preseason, if at all. Maybe comes in game 3 or game 4 for a series or 2, and I'm not even sure that they would. I kind of compare it a little bit to Drew Lock's situation last year with Denver, where they essentially waited until Flacco's wheels fell off, putting him in. If the season is a complete disaster for Miami and they're 1-11 or 1-12, maybe you could see Tua in week 13, week 14, but I think you only get at the end of the season, week 16 or week 17. There's literally no risk. Everyone knows the Dolphins are not playing to win 10 or 11 games next year. It's not possible.
Right.
And that's what I agree. The free agents that you guys signed, I think you had one of the best free agent classes. Obviously, you mentioned Byron Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Jordan Howard, Emmanuel Ogbah, Shaq Lawson. You did get Ted Karras from the Patriots, who will probably be your starter, and then Eric Flowers. But then you had mentioned you drafted 4 offensive linemen. Austin Jackson in the first, Robert Hunt in the second, Solomon Kinley in the fourth. I mean, those are high draft picks on offensive linemen who I assume they're projecting to be starters for them, and then to end with Blake Ferguson, center for LSU.
Yeah, and Perry from Navy with the last pick. I mean, it's more of a developmental season for Miami. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, I mean, did I mention I'm a baseball reporter, guys? Ahead of a
yes,
you're doing a great job on football, though, Craig.
Am I doing a good job faking it for you guys?
Oh,
you are,
man, top notch. It's
okay.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that everybody. I cover the NFL for Sports Grid, which is our 24-hour station that we do in terms of handicapping and fantasy, and I would be probably pegged as more of a fantasy or gambling guy. But through the years, when you work in a market and you cover sports for 20 or 25 years, regardless if you're there every day, you still have good contacts. And I think that is the one thing that I've been able to accomplish in all of these years. I still know people with all of the organizations here in South Florida. And so, I've broken some news and I have some good insight for the Dolphins, but speaking frankly, it's more of the baseball side that I cover.
And I did see on Sports Grid, and Joe Pisapaya says you're warming him up. He's coming on next to talk some Patriots. But you were on, they did a live draft, and I saw you breaking down, and the Dolphins picked Tua. So you are well-rounded.
If you call him Pisapaya, he'll get a good laugh. It's actually Pisapia, but do call him Pisa.
Yeah, I told you. He even was on here a little before the show, and he's correcting him. And I'm like,
all right, now you write it better.
Definitely.
We're trying to do it phonetically.
He came on before we even went live because I gave him the wrong time, and he was listening to me mess his name up. So
That's beautiful.
Yeah, do that, and then tell him that Craig Mish said something about you saying Todd Gurley was going to have a good year last year too.
There you go. Beautiful. We'll make sure to get that in. So going on to the Bucs.
Yes.
Obviously a team that's buzzing right now.
Apparently they got a quarterback.
Yeah, they got a quarterback. Yeah, that's something. But what about obviously they got it hits home with us being Minnesota guys. Getting Antoine Winfield Jr. and also Tyler Johnson. Super excited that they get to go and play for this team. What's some buzz you're hearing about the draft that they had?
Okay, well, kind of to give you my background is for 4 years when I lived in the Sarasota area, which is about an hour away from Tampa. I covered the Buccaneers home and road going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, and traveled with the team and did all of that. I don't cover them now, so I just strictly for anybody who's watching, this is just solely my opinion with nothing else. Okay, just to be clear.
It's facts.
I don't want to. I want to differentiate the facts from the fiction here. And so somebody hits me up and says, "Hey, you don't even cover the Bucs." This is true, so it's only my opinion here. Honestly, the only two players that I can speak of that I have a lot of familiarity with is the kid that they took, Vaughn, the running back, and then obviously with Winfield, who everybody knows. Just generically speaking, for Tampa Bay, anybody that they draft and anything that they've done in the last 2 or 3 months obviously speaks to what they're trying to do, which is win right now. And I don't think that there's any other team in the NFL that's made more of that statement. Of course, it all starts and ends with the fact that you sign Tom Brady and guarantee him $60 million over the next 2 years. But I thought essentially their entire draft from the first to about the fourth round were all players that can help them right now. And the Buccaneers, essentially since those days of Tony Dungy, and then John Gruden winning the championship with Tony Dungy's team, essentially, it's just been, what are we going to call it, a disaster? I mean, there's been very little winning for them. And they basically have put their foot on the pedal and said, we're going to go all in on 2020. Guys, this may look like a disaster in 2 years. It very well may, because the way that the Bucs have kind of built this thing, 2 years ago, they take O.J. Howard and Ronald Jones. Essentially what they're telling us is we're done with O.J. Howard and Ronald Jones based on what they've done. Yeah. Their development and their drafts have just not been good. They've been very unsuccessful outside of the wide receiver position. And I thought the way that they attacked this thing was basically saying, hey, look, if these draft picks aren't around in 2 or 3 years from now, that's fine. They may have to go in a rebuild in 2 or 3 years from now. But I think that they're focused on this year with nothing else.
Yeah, it's definitely win now for them. And you could tell, with the 13th pick in the first round, Tristan Wirfs, who is one of my favorite prospects in the whole draft, they showed him jumping straight out of a pool onto the slab of concrete. I mean, a guy that's 6'5", 300 pounds, having that kind of physical attributes was insane. You touched on Keyshawn Vaughn, that you knew a little about him. Can you tell our viewers and listeners a little more on him?
Yeah, well, I don't think that they were very happy with the running back situation last year. I think that in terms of how they graded out overall, they were either close to the bottom or at the bottom. But we did see some spots where Ronald Jones was very good. But I think that, again, when you're playing on a team that has Tom Brady, you have to have the Kevin Falk, the James White, the Shane Vereen. You have to have someone that's going to be able to jump out of that backfield and catch the ball. And Brady has just been a master of doing that. It's simply not even check down. They're design plays that he's had in the past. So I think Vaughn adds that immediately to the equation in 2020, whether or not they stick with Ronald Jones or whether or not they make a trade. And I think that certainly they should explore it, even if they give up nothing for him. Look, Leonard Fournette probably does. I mean, he may get cut. Like, I don't even know what their plan is in Jacksonville, but they could move Leonard Fournette to Tampa. All of a sudden, they have a great running back there, maybe ship Ronald Jones somewhere else. And then you have Vaughn out of the backfield, those two great wide receivers. You mentioned their first round pick as well. And then, look, the Bucs are going to be in a lot of games this year, very similar to how Bruce Arians was with Arizona, similar to how he was in Pittsburgh. If you're up a lot of points, teams are going to be throwing on you. And if they anticipate that they're going to be up a touchdown or two or involved in these games with the Falcons and the Saints, you got to have a guy like Winfield there too. So I think that was their attack.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, with Evans and Godwin, Tyler Johnson, to me, we're Gopher fans, so obviously we're a little biased, but I think getting him in the 5th round and sliding him in at slot, then with Gronk, and if they keep O.J. Howard, I mean, I know Bruce Arians isn't the best coach when it comes to, utilizing his tight ends, but he's sure going to have to figure it out when he has Gronk and O.J. Howard. I mean, that offense is going to be something to fear. I'm fearing them as the Vikings do play them this year. But with a Super Bowl in Tampa, kind of like the Vikings had a couple years ago, I think they have a great shot if they can put the pieces and everybody stays healthy at actually going.
Look, their defense last year was not good at all. So that's going to have to be a major improvement. But look, of course, the Buccaneers on paper are going to be better. But the reality of it is that, at least for me, you have a situation where you have a stale franchise going on almost 2 decades of not a lot of winning.
Yeah.
And they needed to light a spark. They needed to get the energy back in that building. And the last time they had it was when they built the building and was when they won the Super Bowl with that great defense that they had. There just hasn't been a lot to like since. And I think that this is, sort of that message. Will it work out? I don't know. Will the Bucs be happy if they go with Brady this year 9-7? I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, that could be. I mean, I don't know that their defense is enough to get to 10 wins. But in a situation where the Bucs did something very smartly, was to say to themselves, you know what? In a season where more teams are making the playoffs, 9 wins is good enough to get you in. Let's just get above that hump, get back in the playoffs, and we'll take our chances with Brady. And I think that's where they're headed.
Excellent.
Yeah, I haven't been a Bucs fan since the Mike Allstott era. I used to love. I owned a Mike Allstott jersey.
Yeah, that's when I covered the Buccaneers, when they had those two guys. And
Warwick Dunn, Florida State, and Mike Allstott.
Yeah, and look, they even had another shot, with Bert Emanuel, if they called his catch. I don't know, this is going back, guys, but if he had a catch at the back of the end zone in the NFC Championship game against the Rams, when the Rams won the Super Bowl, a lot of people thought that was a catch, and the Buccaneers win that game. That's dating myself a little bit.
Greg watched that. I think it was his 50th birthday, I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm older than you, Craig. So I'm gonna really test your knowledge of Florida and football. What do you think is going on with Jacksonville? Do you think they're going to pick up Andy Dalton, or do you think they're just going to ride the Gardner Minshew train and then pick up or hope for Trevor next year?
Yeah, I have to be really careful on this one, because I fully last year expected the Dolphins to go 1-15 or 2-14 at best. And they started off that season looking like an 0-16 team. They got themselves to 0-7. And then all of a sudden they forgot they were tanking for Tua and started winning for their coach and their organization. So last year is the last time that I'm ever going to go on record anywhere and say a team is tanking or they're trying to go 0-16 or 1-15. If I didn't know any better, that's exactly how I feel about Jacksonville going into this season. I don't think they have any chance of winning more than a game or two. It's the smart move. It's the right move. I think Lawrence is better than Burrow. I know he got completely outplayed by Burrow in the national championship game, and
I agree.
Burrow had the better season. Okay, like there's no doubting it. There's no arguing it. But Lawrence, I think, is like what Peyton Manning was when he came out of Tennessee. I see the same similarities, except for Lawrence obviously can run. It is the right move for the Jaguars. But what does that mean, guys? Does that mean that the Jaguars start off 0-6 and end up rolling off 3 wins in a row and Minshew has some magic? It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But with every move that they've made, they've indicated, at least publicly, that they're interested in tanking. The Dolphins did not tank last year, and they ended up with their guy. Maybe Jacksonville does the same thing. But on paper, to me, this is by far the worst team in football. And once they eliminate Fournette from that equation, it only gets a little bit worse than that, because that's the only security that offense and defense has, by the way, is giving Fournette the ball 20 or 30 times and hoping the game ends in 2.5 hours as opposed to 3.
Right. Well, Craig, we greatly appreciate it. Where can our viewers and listeners get more of you in their daily diet?
Well, if they're really bored like the rest of us, what you can do is go over to the several different streaming apps that our show is airing on. A lot of people these days, as you guys know, are watching your stream on YouTube, watching our streams on YouTube, and we do have a YouTube channel which is called Sports Grid. You can just subscribe to it, or hit the notifications, and then every single day my show, Fantasy Sports Today, airs. We'll send that to you, and clearly you just turn your phone on and you can get it. But to watch the show live, what you can do is download any of the streaming apps that a lot of people use now. They're called cord cutter apps. I wasn't really familiar with them a year ago, but now I very much am.
Yeah.
CBS and Viacom, they own one called Pluto TV,
That's where I've seen it before. Yep.
Yeah, it's essentially like watching TV, except for you can watch on your phone or watch on your iPad, or if you have the Amazon Fire Stick, the app is free. And so the show airs every single day from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. There's also another one of those apps called Xumo TV. It's XUMO. We air on that one on channel 719. Pluto is channel 519. And then there's another one called Stir. And I'm not as familiar with Stir as I am with the other ones, although I know they have a lot of old 80s shows on.
Nice. There you
Stir,
go.
so I've watched those as well. And then on the audio side, of course, iTunes and wherever you hear podcasts.
Excellent. Well, we greatly appreciate it, Craig. We'll make sure after the show to tweet and, at you as well for the show link. If you would retweet that, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll keep retweeting your stuff, and we greatly appreciate it once again.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.
Yeah,
Thank you,
well.
Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Take care. Be careful up there in the sky.
Beautiful. Awesome interview. There you go. We got Craig. Once again, very grateful for our fan.
At Craig Mish.
Sean Sorrow, thank you for that one. Big shout out.
You can find us at Twist Sports Talk. Everywhere on all the platforms.
Yes.
So from one sports gritter to another,
Oh, the firecracker.
Joe Pisapia.
Hey, how you doing? What's going on, boys? How are you? Oh, what's happening?
Did I get it?
You got it so good. Oh, so good.
Oh,
Forget about it.
Literally about 30 seconds before you came on, Craig Mish had to give him another lesson on how
Shut
to
up,
pronounce
Craig.
your name.
Oh, we did it.
Well, here's the thing. Craig Mish is actually a dear friend of mine. We've worked together for years at SiriusXM Radio. The reason why I got paid in radio, true story, is because of Craig Mish. So friend, mentor, we give each other hard times constantly. We've co-hosted shows on Sirius, on Sports Grid together, all over the place. So it's always fun to it's just fun to be around. I'm the crazy ex-girlfriend that just keeps stalking him no matter how hard he tries to get away from me. He just can't do it.
He did say to bring up Todd Gurley with you.
Hey, Todd Gurley finished as a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 last year. He did. I mean, let's be honest. Numbers are what they are,
That's great, man. That's awesome. So we got you on today, obviously, to go over some of the Patriots picks.
Or lack thereof.
Well, any surprise there?
The most fascinating thing about the Patriots was that we learned that Bill Belichick has a dog named Nike.
Oh, the dog was so great. The dog being there making the picks. It's so Belichick because he's almost like, those nihilists in Big Lebowski. I don't know if you're a fan of the film or not, but he's almost like that when it comes to these things. He's just like, I don't care. He's like, I have the guys I'm going to take. He's like that guy that shows up to your football draft, your baseball draft, and he's got a pencil and paper and he's written down like the 20 something names that he wants on his team. And that's it. That's all he's doing. He knows what he wants. He's going to go and he's going to do it. And what's annoying is he's going to win your league and you hate that guy because you've done all this other prep. So that's what he is basically. And it's not surprising too, because I think when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I said only one or two things are going to happen. If they pass on Tua in Miami and he's there at 5, they're going to move heaven and earth to get him. And if they don't, then it's going to be the Patriots trading out and being blah, blah, boring old Patriots. And that's what we got.
Yep. Yeah, no quarterbacks taken, which surprised me, and even worse was no wide receivers taken. I mean, they just didn't do much. Their first pick was a huge reach in Kyle Duggar. Who?
Well, you got to be a huge college football nerd to know who this was. I was, this is right up there with Oshevsky, who they took from Bemidji State, and I said, is that an accredited university? Is that a real place where people go to school?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Apparently it is. I didn't know that until the Patriots. But Kyle Duggar, look, this is what the Patriots do. They take people with great athleticism, outstanding athletes, outstanding football players. I always go back to that Troy Brown model. That guy who, Troy Brown's a wide receiver, but if I need him to play corner, he can. And if I need him to go play safety one day, I can. He's just a great football player, great athlete. Do we know what this guy is? Of course not. But the good point is that they're looking ahead and they understand that with McCourty and with Chung on the secondary there in the safety position, that they have some age there. And I think if you can groom this kid and become one of these type of players, he certainly profiles a lot like a Patrick Chung type. So we'll see if he can become that at some point. So it makes sense. Again, I could sit here and go, what the hell are you doing? But then again, you look up and these guys always somehow hit for the most part. So you just got to sit back if you're a Patriots fan and I guess trust the process here with this first one.
I did like their pick, Anthony Jennings, outside linebacker out of Alabama. He's a great athlete. He's a big boy, 6'4", 250, and somebody I think Belichick will just mold into be a perennial Pro Bowler.
Yeah, they love these kids from winning environments too. I mean, this is, the culture is winning. So they might take some guy who might not be as great of a tester in the combine or other spots like that. But does he do it on the football field? Is he a good locker room guy? Is he smart? Is he going to pick up the things we're trying to do? And this was the double up draft for the Pats, right? So they took Duggar, then they doubled up at linebacker with Uche and Jennings, and they doubled up again at tight end, but we'll get to that in a second for sure. Yep. But they really are lacking in the linebacker core now too, because no Kyle Van Noy, no Jamie Collins, which means that those are big open spots here. And Uche kind of fits in too, because I thought Winovich was a steal last year. I couldn't believe he lasted to the Patriots where they got him. And now you're putting two of these guys together who played together before. That's always a positive. Two Michigan guys. Again, they've taken a lot of Michigan guys. There was a lot of Alabama guys. They had that Rutgers thing back in the past when Rutgers was better. There's certain environments, certain cultures that they seem to pull from. And Jennings certainly is not surprising, but Uche I thought was a great pick too. So they need linebacker. You can see the Patriots. Everybody else right now is looking about offense except the Patriots. The Patriots are building this defense that was all world last year and could be almost as good this year potentially, maybe younger, maybe more athletic. But it's kind of fascinating to watch because while everybody in the whole league is doing offense, they're looking to how to defend and stop it, which is going to be fascinating to see if it works.
Yeah, from a fantasy football, I did not have New England, but had to play them a couple times, and they were just fun.
Oh, I had them everywhere last year. They were my last pick in every draft, and not because I'm a fan, it was because I knew that defense was going to be worthy of a last-round pick, and I knew they were going to be good enough, certainly. Nobody saw how dominant they were going to be, but people didn't realize at the end of 2018, what a great stretch they had to close out the year. They were tremendous through the playoffs and through that Super Bowl run. So it's not really surprising because people forget they shut out Patrick Mahomes for the first half of the AFC Championship game. No other team came close to doing that last year in any game against Patrick Mahomes, or 2 years ago, I should say. So that should have been a little flag right there that they were going to be a special defense.
Excellent. Are you hearing any interest for Dalton to come to the Pats?
I do the quarterback write-ups still for the Black Book. I'm still the quarterback profile guy. And I did all of them. I've left Stidham and Dalton. Those are the only two I haven't written up yet because I'm not sure if we're going to get that Vinny Testaverde kind of thing, where like he took Testaverde in Cleveland and he won with him there. And then again with the Jets when he was over there with Parcells, they were able to get him. And I kind of wonder if that's not a really good fit there with Andy Dalton. And I think it could be. I think the next couple of weeks we'll have some clarity there. Otherwise, it's going to be Stidham. It's not going to be Hoyer. I went back and I watched a lot of film on Stidham again and, tried to read up and get familiar with him again, like we always try to do for all these kids coming in. And I went back and I read the profile that I wrote for him the year before in the Black Book. And I feel like he's a guy that's good enough and another guy that comes from a good culture. It's not a joke over there in Auburn. This is a competitive football team. And I think that they could win games with him. If I told you, as we kind of turned the page into November, that the Patriots were 6-2, it wouldn't shock you now, would it?
No.
They'll play defense. They'll score enough points. They fix we'll see if they fix the kicker position, but they're going to try to win games, 20-17. They're going to try to win games in a 14-13 kind of fashion. They're going to get ugly. It's not going to be good for your fantasy team. You're going to hate it unless you own the defense. But I think that's their approach right now is they're trying to play defense in an era of never before seen offense. And it worked last year. And unfortunately, by the end, there's too many injuries, too many issues on the offense. And I think you could see the fray between Belichick and Brady and everything kind of coming. And it happens. 20 years is a long time for anybody to be paired up doing anything with anybody. Just think of your parents and their marriages, just think of that. Yeah. So it's not surprising. And I think it was just time for everybody to take a breath and maybe a new challenge for everybody. And I'll be rooting for Tom for sure as a Pats fan. But I'll say this, Stidham, I would put it as a 60% chance he's the quarterback. I would say Dalton a 40% chance. I'd say 0 Cam Newton. I do not see that happening at all.
See, I'll take we do fishbowl bets here on Twist. And if either of these chumps want to take me on, I 100% guarantee Andy Dalton will not be a Patriot. Belichick is going to ride the Stidham wave. He thinks he's got, a horse's cock, and he's going to go with it.
Well, I mean, who's to tell me he doesn't? Because the hand holding that cock has a lot of rings on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Greg, are you taking that fishbowl bet?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to see it happen.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it this way, Belichick won, Parcells won 2 rings. Both times Belichick was part of it. The only other time Parcells got to the Super Bowl is when Belichick came onto that staff as assistant head coach after things went south in Cleveland. He actually got the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. People forget that. And then everything just completely disintegrated when they announced the move, and everything just completely crumbled, which is a shame. They had a lot of talent on that team. So he's won everywhere. So he can act however he wants. He's earned that. I know a lot of people don't like it, but at a certain point, you have to admit, look, he wins everywhere he is. He is smarter than just about everybody else. And he's able to and willing to push the limits more than anybody else. And I'm okay with that because, it's my team. And I think that if it's your team that has Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, you're pretty happy about your life the last 20 years as well, because things have worked out for you. I know they took the 2 tight ends too. Just to hit those guys real quick. I think Dalton Keene's going to be kind of like that H-back system thing where they're going to, they have to replace Devlin. Devlin was hurt last year. The Patriots always have been a team that utilized the fullback in the run game. When he was hurt last year, it was this thing that went under the radar. But to me, it was the difference in that offense. The first half of the year when he was there, run game was working. Things were good. They were winning a ton of games. Things got real rough for that offense real quick. And for that running game too, when Devlin got hurt, he retired just yesterday. I think Keene's going to kind of be groomed into that role. And Ossie might be a good player. I mean, he has all the tools to be. Tight ends usually take a little while to develop. So I'm not shocked they didn't go wide receiver. I'm just not, because I think if you want Stidham to work, you just kind of leave him alone here. You try to go with the pieces you have. You have Edelman. You hope that N'Keal Harry is the guy that you drafted him for last year. They're a team that's going to be built on defense. This is going to be an ugly offense, but you've won games in a lot of games in the past. If you go back and look at the track record of the Pats, man, they win on defense. I mean, the times where they had the top offense in the league, even when they made the Super Bowl those years, they lost. So, the times that they won, the offense was middling and the defense was really, really good.
Well, that answered my question with the tight ends. I figured grabbing 2 in the 3rd round, you're hoping one emerges over the other as that tight end 1. But you're thinking Ossie is going to be the tight end 1 potentially.
Right. He's the fantasy guy. He's the pass catching tight end. The other guy is going to be all purpose blocking tight end. I'm trying to think of give you he's more of an all purpose guy. He's going to block. He's probably going to play that fullback position at the goal line. You're going to see a lot of that setup. Yeah, he's going to be in the mold of like some of the other tight ends you've seen, like almost like early Ben Watson back in the day. Like that kind of thing. I think you could see him more as that. He's not going to be a tight end you care about in fantasy, but he's going to be a tight end that's going to be important to the offense if they can work him in properly into the things they want to do. It's funny, this role also was kind of the role that Mike Vrabel had when he would show up on offense. Again, another guy, we just like to draft football players. Oh, you're a linebacker? Why don't you go line up in the backfield, or why don't you go line up at tight end and we're going to throw a pass to you? But that's what they do. They play football. It sucks for fantasy, but they play football better than most other people play football.
Excellent. Awesome. So go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just, being a fantasy guy, you're following every team. Does this philosophy, this in Bill we trust, run it with, power him with defense, does this work if you're in the NFC West? I mean, let's be honest. A lot of this philosophy is working and being successful because they're in a crappy division. So I guess what I'm wondering is it more of Bill, this is the way he does it because the division just isn't that good?
Well, look, you go back and look at, I did a fun little study because all the 49er fans came out of the woodwork again the last year. So you have to kind of put everybody in their place. And I should send it to you after. I got to find the tweet, but what I did was I went back and I found the records during the NFC Championship era of the 49er Great Joe Montana teams. It's stunningly bad how bad those divisions were with those awful Falcon teams and a couple other just dreadful. I think there were 2 teams that had 500 records. That was it. Like it was stunning. And even the 85 Bears were another team. The year they won, they think they played 2 teams with winning records, 2 teams with 500 records, and the rest were all sub 500. So you're only as good as who's on the schedule. You're right. And yeah, the ineptitude of the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bills has really helped them, of course, get that home field advantage. But there's been times where the Jets were good. I mean, they went to 2 AFC championship games. Look, you can only do what's given to you, right? And they've had a lot of opportunities, all those teams, to at some point over the last 2 decades put something together. Some have for a short period of time. I think it's Buffalo's division to lose, but I wouldn't be shocked if they lost it. And that's the thing. It's just one of those things. Now that you're not the team that's Cinderella, now that you're a team where you have expectations, how do you respond to that? How does Josh Allen respond to that? And I think that defense, especially even through this draft, got even better for Buffalo. Buffalo is a really good football team, and I thought they were last year too. I thought the offense would come along, and they did. Adding Diggs is a nice piece, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's Buffalo's division to lose, and the Patriots will still be competitive. I don't know how much they're going to help you in fantasy right now. We'll see what happens. Stidham's the unknown. But then again, Tom Brady was too once upon a time.
Well, we'll definitely plan on having you on leading earlier up to the season for fantasy aspects and things like that. But go ahead and plug our fans with how they can get more Joe in their life.
Well, I mean, who doesn't want more of that? You can check out Sports Grid, where I am hosting Diamond Bets with Matt Stryker, former WWE superstar, and now reality show star, which I'm giving him a ton of crap because he's on some reality show right now that's on Fox. So get ready, because the next couple weeks of our show is going to be hilarious when I tease him about that. Also, that's on every Sunday. I do the NFL pregame show there too on Sunday mornings when we start to turn the page to NFL. And then the new fantasy football black book will be out on Amazon June 1st, maybe sooner. We're shooting for earlier because everybody seems to want it because they're bored in their houses and everybody just wants to get the book out there. And you can follow me on Twitter at JoePizapia17 for all the links to the podcast for the black book too.
Excellent.
We'll be getting our black books ordered here soon. And sounds like we're going to have a full page ad.
Oh, glorious. Look, you guys run I like coming on with you guys because you guys run a fun show, and to me, that's what it's about, man. There's too much boring talk out there where people just sit there and they have, like, yeah, you like this? Yeah, he's good. Yeah, he is good. I like him. It's the worst. It's the worst. You guys are not that, and I appreciate that, and that's why I like coming on with y'all. So
thanks, Joe. Talk to you soon.
Later, boys.
Take it easy.
So thanks, Matt. I'm never going to know about Justin Rarwazer, the kicker they got in the 5th.
On the next one. I wish we had a 5-hour show. It'd be awesome.
We can have the show we want.
You got his number. You can call him right after this.
Damn it. Just because he's got to go to effing Duluth, he's got to ruin my questions. Now, if you try and end a reef too early,
never that.
I'm going to dump hot coffee on your face.
The Athletic at theathletic.com. Go and subscribe now.
Maybe.
I'm subscribing.
Hello.
There he is.
Yeah.
Arif, how are you? Welcome to Twist.
Hey, I'm good. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. We had 5 guests lined up, so we actually had 3 videos. We went back to back to back, and this is perfect. We'll end it with you and Dave Sinekin talking some Vikes and some Pack.
All right.
Well, perfect. Obviously, we got Green Bay Greg here as one of the hosts, so he's happy about Dave Sinekin. But let's talk about a team that actually hit on the draft.
I kid. You guys had enough picks. You're bound to get one or two.
You know what,
right?
Greg? Let the men speak here for a minute. So, I love the fact that I don't think the Vikes would have reached on a wide receiver this year, but the fact that Justin Jefferson fell in our laps, obviously the stats were there from last year. 111 catches, over 1,500 yards, 18 touchdowns. I mean, an unbelievable year. Obviously, he had Joe Burrow. But can you touch on that pick for us a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So it seems like the Vikings would not have selected a receiver in the first round and weren't planning to, but they didn't expect Justin Jefferson to fall that far. And I think it's just because it took so long for the first wide receiver to come off the board. And then San Francisco didn't take a wide receiver like many people expected them to. And that kind of just led to Justin Jefferson being there. And in most of the Vikings simulations, he wasn't at all available. So they changed their plans a little bit. They decided to draft him, especially feeling like they got a little lucky that the Eagles passed up on him. And they're obviously ecstatic because he's somebody that they hold a pretty high regard in. They thought he was going to go potentially even in the top half of the first round. And so this is somebody that was outside of their plans because they thought he was just too talented to be there. It's kind of like Sharif Floyd, way back in 2013.
Definitely. So then go into the second pick that we had.
Oh.
Obviously, that's my guy.
Benz loves him.
I was really high on Gladney before the draft. I wanted us to take him. Give us a couple traits of Jeff Gladney that make him a first-round pick.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing the Vikings like about him is how kind of aggressive he is. The Vikings have invested in a lot of corners this year that have got a high number of pass deflections whenever there's targets headed in their direction. They do a really good job of batting the ball, getting their hands on the ball in some way. All of the corners that they drafted are really physical. Gladney is a really great example of that, and is very willing to challenge receivers at any point in the route, whether that's at the line of scrimmage and press, throughout the route, or on the sideline. They do a great job of contesting catches and then winning those contested catches. In fact, Justin Jefferson has the highest win contested catch rate among receivers in the draft, and Jeff Gladney has the highest win contested catch rate among cornerbacks in the draft.
Love that stat.
I love that.
Before you guys jump into round two, and this
Stop
is gonna
looking
take
at my
forever.
paper,
No, this
Greg.
is going to take forever. Do you think that there was ever any serious talk about taking 22 and 25 and trying to move up into the top 10? Or was that just
I do think
fan talk?
that was serious, and I think that had the board been a little bit different, if Jefferson was off, I think they would have done that. And I think the two prospects they were potentially eyeing, and this is mostly conjecture, but the prospects I think they were eyeing were another LSU player, Caleb Chasen, and then Tristan Wirfs at offensive tackle. I think those are the two that they'd be willing to package together some picks to move up for. Obviously, there are too many talented players on the board for them to be that aggressive, and so they were willing to just kind of let the board fall to them. But I do think that steam was legitimate.
Yeah, and Tristan Wirfs would have been. We had Craig Mish on before you, and he was talking some Bucs, and we were all high on him.
Yeah, definitely.
But a different offensive tackle going into our third pick, but the second round, Ezra Cleveland, a big boy out of Boise State. What do we know about him?
Yeah, well, he's one of those super athletes, and I think that if he was in a different class, a lot more people would be talking about his incredible athletic capability. But I think in a class with Tristan Wirfs and Mekhi Becton and even Isaiah Wilson, people kind of lose sight of the fact that Ezra Cleveland is more athletic than any tackle in the 2018 class when they were able to draft Brian O'Neill, and just generally speaking, is one of the top 20 athletes at offensive tackle that we've seen. Going all the way back to at least 2004 when we've got reliable combine data. So he's a super athlete that wasn't getting a ton of play, was pretty good in pass protection and true pass sets, at least in the Mountain West. He's got some technical stuff to clean up, but he's got the attitude they want. He's, kind of a big finisher. But most importantly, he's got the ability, without losing much technique, to get to the edge on those wide zone runs that the Vikings love so much.
So Cameron Dantzler, he was the number 9 rated cornerback in the draft. 6'2", kind of prototypical Zimmer size, was a little slower on his 40, which is why I think he fell to the third round. He's a shutdown cornerback. He held Jamar Chase to 45 yards against LSU and really showed up, like Ben's, like Gladney, who shut down CeeDee Lamb, shut down some of these top, powerhouse schools. And I think will be a great fit. I see Gladney kind of taking that slot role and Dantzler kind of moving into your outside corner. What are your thoughts on Cameron?
Yeah, well, I think the Vikings were a little bit lucky, and then also were a little bit forced into the pick because I think, they've got Mike Hughes, who's like 5'10", 5'11". They've got Jeff Gladney, who's under 6 feet tall. And I think they wanted a guy to be able to win those matchups. So if you take a look at the next couple of cornerbacks off the board, they're players like Darnay Holmes and Troy Pride and Amik Robertson. And they're not guys that have the ability to contest, those 6'4" receivers that you see even now in the division with Allen Robinson that you've seen in the past. And so the fact that they were able to grab the receiver with that kind of length, and then also a guy that has the ability to kind of locate the ball. He's got, again, one of the best contested catch rates in the FBS. He's got a great job. He does a great job of getting his hands on the ball for pass deflections. And he's very physical. He might be the best off the line of scrimmage and press. So he's a guy that they really needed for matchup purposes because there were no talented corners left that tall after Michael Ojemudia went off the board. And then also he does have kind of a keen eye for the ball.
Now with the next pick of DJ Wanham, what am I missing on him? Because I'm not high on him.
He's terrible. No.
So I'm just trying to figure out what I'm missing. If you could help me with that.
Sure. Well, I am not particularly high on DJ Wanham either, so I can't do the greatest job of selling him. But the thing that I really like about him is that if you take a look at his frame looks very, very similar to Daniil Hunter's. He's 6'5", he's got 33-inch arms, he's got the same size hands. They're almost identical from a frame perspective, and that's very appealing to someone like Andre Patterson, who likes to be able to kind of use the leverage that you get from having those long arms. And then you take a look at his athletic measurements. He's got an average to an above average athlete, very similar athletic measurables to a Fadio Denebo, who the Vikings are obviously very high on. And when you can kind of find those two packages, you've got enough athleticism, you've got enough potential to kind of work something in there. But you're right, he's not incredibly productive. He wasn't one of the most productive defensive ends in the draft or anything like that. But in a draft where there just wasn't that much talent at edge rusher, they decided to bet on potential.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, with Andre Patterson and kind of the past. Everson Griffin wasn't a first-round pick. We've been able to mold these guys. So I think that was definitely a flyer pick in the fourth of this is a guy we can potentially, make into something, not that he is something now.
Yeah, I think that's more the idea, and I think it's going to take a couple of years before he can meaningfully contribute. I don't think he's going to start this year.
So Troy Dye was a steal for me in the fourth round. They had him, anywhere from, top, second round pick, linebacker out of Oregon. Do you think he's going to start in the special teams, or does he have an opportunity to get into that starting lineup with Barr and Kendricks?
Well, I think he slots in immediately into special teams. I think that they really like his ability on special teams. He did actually a lot of special teams at Oregon, and he fits kind of their mold for those special teams linebackers. I mean, they draft a linebacker every year in the late to middle rounds, but usually they try to get one of the faster guys, like Brandon Watts ran a 4.4, for example. Larry Dean was a 4.5. And Troy Dye is kind of in the same area where he's kind of a 4.5 guy. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles. He's got one of the lowest mid tackle rates. So he's really good for special teams because he's got the technique and the speed. And then at Oregon, up the line of scrimmage, a lot of people kind of said, hey, if he loses a little bit of weight, maybe he could be a safety. And he's a really good coverage player. I don't think he's as good as Eric Wilson in coverage, but I think he's a lot better against the run than Wilson. And so now you've got a competition where Eric Wilson's really great in coverage, Ben Gideon's really great defending against the run, and Troy Dye is kind of in between the two, and he's better at the things that the other guys are weak at, and still pretty good at the other things. So you've got kind of a lot of tools, plus you've also got Cameron Smith in that room. I think the depth at linebacker has been better for the Vikings than it has been in a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So then moving down the list, obviously, you got Harrison Hand, who I'm liking. I like that pick a lot. I like having two, Harrisons back there. That's always nice. What's your biggest sleeper when we get into those later rounds? What's your sleeper for the Vikes?
The two guys I like are actually also front seven guys. Kenny Willekes from Michigan State, super productive, much better against the run than you'd expect somebody his size to be. I don't think he's a super athlete or anything like that, but he's been pretty productive, and he's done a pretty great job of kind of leveraging the tools that he has and winning with technique in order to kind of set the edge and also generate some pressure. And then the other guy is James Lynch from Baylor, who led the FBS in pressures with 90, according to Pro Football Focus. And he was a Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He has a ton of tackles for loss. He's got a lot of production. He's not that athletic when you compare him to defensive end, but he is pretty athletic when you compare him to defensive tackles, and that's where the Vikings are going to move him. The Vikings need a lot more talent at that three technique pass rushing position, and he kind of adds to that competition. And despite being a fourth-round pick, he could start right away.
Awesome. And then, of course, Green Bay, Greg's favorite pick of ours, Nate Stanley out of Iowa. Can you tell us how he's going to be better than Jordan Love?
Well, he does have a cannon. He and Jordan Love do share that. I don't know if he's got quite the athletic ability of someone like Jordan Love, and he can't really improvise like him. But the idea behind him is that he does pretty much everything you want a statue pocket passer to have, except he's pretty inconsistent in terms of accuracy. He's been working with a mechanics coach all offseason, and he's working to kind of reduce the amount of time it takes to get his motion going. And that'll also, in theory, kind of complete the kinetic chain and improve his accuracy. And I think if you take Nate Stanley and improve his accuracy, he's actually a pretty good quarterback. It is also the most difficult thing to improve.
You know, I see him as a backup for his entire career. I think they drafted a great backup in the 7th round. The one thing that frustrates me as a Vikings fan is that they're not doing more to have a successor. You know, I don't agree with the way the Packers went about it, but you looked at a lot of these teams who have young starting quarterbacks in the draft this year, and they took high-profile players. You know, and you look at Jalen Hurts, who was gone. It drives me nuts that the Vikings are just kind of drafting a Browning and, you know, a Stanley and a Sean Mannion as your backup. And I get we have Cousins for 3 years, but why not grab, you know, one of the guys this year and have him wait?
Yeah, well, you're right. They haven't invested that much into backups, and Browning was an undrafted free agent. They actually haven't drafted a developmental backup guy since John David Booty in 2005. You know, Tavares Jackson was a 2nd-round pick, and Joe Webb was meant to be a receiver. But, you know, they don't really draft backup or developmental quarterbacks. They usually just draft guys to start. And so this is kind of the first time they've done that since Spielman's arrived. And I think that you're right, that's kind of hurt the Vikings in the past. They got a little bit lucky when they, you know, traded for Sam Bradford and stuff like that. But I think that you're right. They don't have a successor. And the great thing about Stanley in that regard is that you need your backups in the quarterback room to be really smart on the whiteboard and to kind of help the quarterback out. You can't just be a guy that's ready to go. And that's what the value that Sean Mannion provides. And I think Stanley is pretty good at that kind of same thing.
All right. So, you know, now that you're talking about developmental players, now that the draft is over, you guys picked your 47 players in the draft. You picked up your free agents.
This is Green Bay Greg, by the way.
Yeah, I think you figured that out. And do you think now, having said what you said about, you know, the edge rusher not being a strong spot in the draft, do you think they pick up the phone and call Everson, see if they can get him back?
Yeah, I think so. And I think Spielman even said on like Pro Football Talk, their morning show, whatever it is, said that they never say never on an Everson Griffin return. I don't know if it's going to happen. You know, you did say goodbye to Minnesota on Instagram. It's kind of difficult to come back from that. But I think the door's open. I wouldn't be shocked if they send out some feelers to Clowney. I don't really see an opportunity there for them to improve the position right away, but there are some options.
Beautiful. Clowney, that would be insane. I would love that.
You don't have enough money for him.
Greg, we're flushed with cash. Just stop. So a couple of the biggest undrafted free agents that I think have a great chance of making the 53-man roster are Neville Clark and Courtney Davis. What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, Neville Clark works in a diverse defense. That's kind of one of the reasons that he was attracted to the Vikings and the reason that he signed with them right away. And of course, he's already got chemistry with Mike Hughes, you know, where they work in the same backfield. You know, he's somebody that does a pretty good job of contesting catches as well. Like the Vikings have done a pretty good job of like getting these kind of like annoying gnats that have the ability to kind of stick in coverage. You know, he doesn't have the same physical profile as a lot of the corners that went earlier in the draft. But, you know, that's somebody that they were kind of surprised was available. And the same thing is kind of true with Courtney Davis. Yeah, at 6'1", 201 pounds, you know, he was kind of bigger than some of the late round receivers that we saw. It would have been nice if he'd had a pro day to kind of complete his athletic profile. But anytime you get a 200-pound receiver running a 4.5, you're in a pretty good position. You know, he does a pretty good job of using his physicality. He does a pretty good job of generating explosion at the break. And so he can do some stuff as a route runner. He doesn't really get open deep all that much, but at a 4.54, it is possible. He has some injury concerns they have to worry about, but I think for the most part, you've got a guy that's a big body that you can win on third downs if he does end up turning out.
Excellent.
That's great. Well, that's all I got. I don't know about these fellas. We're gonna end the show with the worst draft with Dave Sinekin. I'm sure you know him, but we'll share this on Twitter and tag you and the rest of our guests. So we hope you can share that out and retweet that. And we'd love to have you back on. We appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks,
All
Larry.
right. Thanks, Reef. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Yeah, man, you too.
Skull Vikes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to
All right, well, let's end the
Well,
show.
Yeah,
We're done.
All right. Me and Mike might as well just step away, let Greg have his time
Yeah.
with the head cheese here.
You know, I said a comment earlier. It's Christmas come early for Greg, except for he got a lump of coal.
Yeah.
I want someone to validate my feelings.
Oh, I don't know if Dave will be that guy, but we'll see. We'll see, Greg. Get excited.
Hello,
Green Bay Greg can't sit still over here, Dave.
Dave, what's going on?
gentlemen. How we doing?
Fabulous.
Just got done with Arif Hassan from The Athletic talking some Vikes.
He's probably positive. 14-2, new dynasty.
Oh, of course. We all are.
Yeah, that's how it works,
Yeah,
Dave.
sure.
You know us. Yeah, it's excellent.
Draft day is the Viking Super Bowl day every year.
Yes, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, they got 47 players on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They got a whole new team.
They're bound to get a few right.
Yeah, exactly. So, Dave, help me out here. I'm a man on an island. What positives can we get out of last Thursday night?
Yeah, Thursday night was rough. I got up from my seat when I saw the Vikings or the Packers were trading up, because I had thought that maybe they would jump up ahead of Baltimore and go after Patrick Queen. You know, maybe Goody would be the anti-Ted Thompson, go after a speed inside linebacker early and address the biggest hole in the Packers defense. So I was really excited that was the deal. And when they announced Jordan Love, I was gobsmacked like every other Packers fan on the planet. But I'm of the opinion that this organization has the cachet with what they've done with their last two quarterbacks, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they know something we don't, that this is a guy that's going to take the torch from Rodgers in 2 to 3 years. I'd like it to be 3 years. And, let Rodgers, if he's 40 and looking to finish up somewhere, wish him well and get that purple number 12 jersey ready to go.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I'm not going to second guess it right now.
You know, I was just telling Arif, I do like how that you did grab Jordan Love. I just don't like how you went about it by trading up to get him. Rodgers fell to you. To me, that's the biggest frustrating thing as a Vikings fan. I look at a player like Jacob Eason, 6'6", 230, huge arms, all the tangibles. And, falls to the fourth round where the Vikes could have grabbed somebody like that rather than a 7th round pick in Nate Stanley, who's going to be a backup. And he can sit behind Cousins for 3 years where we have somebody like that. But of course not. We have 70,000 picks and not one of which, is a decent predecessor to Cousins.
Yeah, it's curious that they don't put draft capital against a quarterback, find a guy they believe they can run with, because you're right. The timing right now with 2 more years of Cousins would be perfect to find a developmental guy. Even the Love pick might have made some sense with 2 number 1 picks if they liked him as much as Green Bay did, and obviously they didn't. I'm just kind of hoping, guys, that history repeats itself and we'll look back in 10 years and say, just like in 05, the Vikings had 2 number 1 chances to draft Love and passed, and Green Bay didn't really need him, but took him, and here we go for another 15 years.
It's like a Steph Curry deal, too, with Rubio and what's-his-face.
I sure hope that doesn't happen, Dave, but whatever.
I'm sure you don't.
Yeah, so I'm going to go here, Greg, because I know you got plenty of questions. So I talked to Greg that day, obviously, after you guys took Jordan Love. I said, if that's the most mysterious pick that you guys have, that's fine. Sure enough, we're in the 2nd round. We're watching it together. And then your pick comes up, and there goes A.J. Dillon. Explain that one.
6 feet, 400-pound running back.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just go back to Matt LaFleur running the Titans and envisioning maybe his own new version of Derrick Henry and having kind of a thunder and lightning backfield. Green Bay's offense is going to be the Shanahan model. It's going to be pound the team on the ground like the 49ers do. And Green Bay has 2 running backs who are in the last year of their deals, and I figured they'd address running back in the draft.
I did not expect them to take one with their second pick in light of what they did with the first pick and not addressing a real 2020 need. But everything I hear about Dylan, this is a guy that, as the weather changes and Green Bay didn't really have a power running back that they can count on, it's going to add a dimension to the offense. But it just wasn't really in the top 5 of needs of how do we get over the top in 2020. And that's how fans feel. You're looking at the next season, front office is saying, how are we making this offense in the mold of our new head coach? What pieces do we need? And clearly they identified the running game ahead of whatever receivers were left in that at the bottom of the second round. Sounds like there were 2 guys they had their eye on as receivers in the second round, and they couldn't get up early enough to get them. And after those 2 guys were gone, they didn't figure there was a guy left that was going to make a noticeable difference in the next season.
So when you're talking about pass catchers, I thought the Packers' 2 biggest needs were, first of all, inside linebacker and tight end. Now, they didn't go after a tight end in the first round or the second round. They took care of that in the third.
Or the third, he's a fullback.
Yeah, he's more of a fullback. But is Jace, and I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, Sternberger. Thank you. I know he was injured last year. Is he their go-to guy going into this year now as a pass-catching tight end?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I think most draft experts, when asked, said Sternberger would have probably been the first tight end off the board in this draft. There was a real thin year. It was not a year to take a tight end early, even though the Bears made that their first choice. And you guys know tight ends rarely contribute a lot in their first year. Mm-hmm. Sternberger had one big year of major college football and was very productive, but I think he needed this year to kind of learn. And we saw, as you kind of touched on in the playoffs, that I think he's a guy they're going to count on to be their pass-catching tight end. Robert Tonyan is still there, and I still do think that kid's got the talent. Mercedes Lewis is there, who can obviously contribute as a blocker and a catch here and there. But it's not a position of strength unless Sternberger really explodes this year. And I don't know that he will, but they're going to give him the opportunity.
In all seriousness, I do like your draft on paper. It's just, I think the frustration, like you said, and like Greg talks about every 3 seconds, is they didn't draft for need to win now, right off the bat. You did get good players, whether they'll produce right away. I love 5th round and beyond for you guys. I was, super, super, super pissed off. You took my boy from Burnsville, Kamal Martin, who I think is going to be an elite player for you guys for years. But then you get, you spend your 6th round picks all on the offensive line, one of which we've said here on Twist, John Runyon, we're a huge fan of. You just solidified a lot of needs late. So I thought you hit on some of those guys. What are your thoughts?
Day 3 picks are kind of fun. A lot of Big Ten feel to it. I think Kamal has gotten to a spot where he has a real opportunity if he can put those injuries behind him, because Green Bay has really nothing that you can count on inside linebacker. They brought in Christian Kirksey from Cleveland to take Blake Martinez's place, and he was a captain for a while in Cleveland, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field the last 2 years. So you can't really count on him, but behind him, Oren Burks hasn't been staying healthy for his first 2 years and looks a potential bust out of Vandy. And they've got a 7th round pick from last year and an undrafted kid from Oklahoma who tore his ACL last year. So I think Kamal Martin has stepped into a real opportunity to make an impact if he impresses. Again, it's going to be tough for all these rookies with a truncated offseason, I think, to be counted on to contribute right away. But I think Martin's landed in a really good spot if he can get past the injuries. The offensive lineman, Runyon, obviously his dad was a beast. The center they've got to figure has a chance to replace Corey Linsley if those 2 sides can't come to a deal after the 2020 season. And I'm an Indiana guy, that's where I went. So they grabbed this Stepanski kid who tore his ACL in December. But I have a feeling of the 3, he may have the best long-term future of being a starter on this offensive line down the road.
Awesome.
Yeah, to get center and 2 guards that can potentially start for you, is hitting on the draft for sure.
And they've got a track record. You look at where Green Bay's really hit on the offensive line, from Bakhtiari to Lang to Sitton. Those were all 4th, 5th, 6th round guys that became all pros. So they've got good scouts when it comes to the offensive line and not necessarily looking early, just like we've always talked about with wide receiver, where they find their capital in the second and third round.
All right. Does this draft tell us that the Packers have a lot of confidence in Funchess, not going after, a wide receiver when you had several opportunities? Or do they expect Lazard or any of these other rookies or guys that were rookies last year to step up?
That's a good question. I think the biggest issue with the Packers receiving core is just a lack of speed. They didn't add a guy that brings a new element to this offense. All the receivers like Lazard, like Funchess, are big physical targets that can get off the break and get open, but they don't have guys that can beat anybody downfield. So, but they were hoping Marquez Valdez-Scantling in his third year can kind of find himself. They were so high on him last year. We heard about how he trained with Randy Moss leading into last season, and he just didn't capitalize on the opportunity that he had. And I don't know how many chances he's going to get. You're not going to see a lot of 3 and 4 receiver sets with the Packers offense. All their plays are going to look like running plays with 2 tight ends and 2 receivers, and you're not going to know if they're going to run or pass the ball. And that's what the 49ers do. So I don't think the depth chart of receiver is going to be tested that much. And I'd like to see them add a speedy guy, a guy like Taylor Gabriel is out there, and that's the kind of talent I think this offense lacks. But I don't know if they're going to go after him. They do have Equanimeous St. Brown, who had shown something in 2018. He and Rodgers had a nice connection going, and he got hurt in preseason last year. So they get him back after missing a season. So I don't know where the depth chart goes. It's Devontae Adams and the Seven Dwarfs right now, and you hope that one guy kind of breaks out.
Well, it's going to be fun to look forward to. We appreciate, you coming on and ending the show with us. We've had a great lineup. It's been a great episode, and we were glad you could be a part of it.
Anytime, guys. Great to do it.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Skull.
Yep, see you. Stop.
Got him.
Woo!
Awesome. Great
What
show.
a show.
Make sure you guys are sharing this episode. Please make sure you do that. Check out rtfsportsnetwork.com.
RTF, baby. Show of the month next week. Number 23 episode. That's my jump man.
Jump man.
Boo Green Bay.
That's all I got to say.
That's all I got to say. You guys suck. Thanks, guests. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week.